Hello people of YouTube, it's Deepak here, and welcome to DCS World 2.9.0 and Heat Blur Simulation's AJS37 Viggen module. Welcome to Tutorial 2, Takeoff. Takeoff in most aircraft is a very quick and easy thing to achieve, and it is in the Viggen as well. However, we need a dedicated tutorial for this aircraft because the symbology and instruments, especially the symbology on the HUD, are very different from other modern Western aircraft, and so they deserve a tutorial all of their own for us to go over. So, the aircraft is in the same state that we left it at the end of the previous tutorial, Tutorial 1 Startup. So it's ready to go. It's currently sitting on the parking brake. But what I'll do before we proceed is I'll go over the instruments in the cockpit so that we understand exactly what we're looking at here. So starting with the main kind of frontal area of the cockpit here, just under the glare shield we have the autopilot mode lights, currently with SPAC illuminated and the other two not. SPAC is the standard stability augmentation mode of the autopilot. This should be on at all times, and it helps you to avoid certain types of pilot-induced oscillation and just makes the aircraft generally easier to handle. You can disable it and completely fly the aircraft manually, however it's recommended that this mode is left on at all times. Next mode you have is ATT for attitude. This will hold the aircraft in the current pitch or roll condition unless the wings are almost level, in which case it will maintain level flight. Height mode, HOID, is an altitude hold mode where the aircraft will maintain the current altitude that you've programmed. We then have the main airspeed indicator here. This is showing us our speed in hundreds of kilometers per hour, and we also have windows in the middle for your Mach number. To the right of that, we have the main attitude indicator. This is a very handy instrument. You do have pitch bars on the HUD as well. However, the HUD in the Viggen is very, very decluttered. It doesn't show very much information, and it actually only has plus and minus 5-degree pitch bars. So if you're maneuvering hard, the HUD is actually going to give you no attitude reference at all, and so you then need to reference this instrument here. You then have the main barometric altimeter. This is showing us hundreds of meters with the long pointer and thousands of meters with the short pointer. You can also set your pressure altitude in the window below. We're currently set to QFE, airfield elevation. You then have your central indicator here right in the middle of the cockpit. This is a kind of combination HSI, RWR and radar display with your current heading displayed as a tape around the outside. This yellow indicator down here would normally show you the direction to your current waypoint. You've got these lights, which are the RWR lights, and then in the very middle of the display is the radar display, currently blank. Actually, above here to the left of the HUD, you've got your angle of attack indicator. To the right of the HUD, you've got your clock. To the right of that is your G meter. And then below that you have a combination of your engine instruments and backup instruments. So here we have a backup attitude indicator, a backup airspeed indicator, a backup altimeter, barometric, a backup compass, it's currently showing magnetic heading with this pointer. You have your RPM gauge here in percent. Below it, it also has the zone indicators for the afterburner. The afterburner has zones 1, 2 and 3. And then below that you have the engine pressure indicator, currently indicating just over 1.0. Right of that, you've got your currently selected waypoint. We have waypoint 0, which is our origin waypoint. You have distance to currently selected waypoint. It can flip between kilometers and miles. Be aware that kilometers are individual kilometers, but miles are Swedish miles, and Swedish miles are strange. Swedish miles are tens of kilometers, not what you would expect. And then underneath that, you've got your fuel gauge. Fuel gauge is displaying in up to 100%, and then above 100% is what's in the external tanks. We're currently reading about 124%. Also note you've got this thing that looks kind of like a barber pole. The Swedes call it the tie, and that is showing you how much fuel you would need to complete the remainder of your entire flight plan. So we need to have at least 70% fuel to make it the whole way around our planned flight plan. Okay, with that done, let's proceed with taxiing to the active. I'm going to be following the wonderful, wonderful kneeboards from Minky182 as before. Let's jump all the way to the taxi part of this. The taxi landing light switch, we actually turned it on last time, but I think I actually have it off right now. Let me just double check. Yes. So that's it on now. Radar master mode is in nav, as we can see in the left console, and we can confirm that because the HUD is actually displaying an image, and it wouldn't be if it wasn't. We're not going to be using engine anti-ice today. Pitch trim... Oh no, that's me actually jumping back to the startup. Ground power is already off. The parking brake, we can actually just tap the toe brakes to disengage that, and you heard that and you saw the lever move. We are now on the toe brakes only. And now we're going to taxi to the runway. Let's hide the kneeboard for now. So just a little bit of throttle to get us going. I'm off the toe brakes. Note that nose wheel steering is always on in this aircraft. There's no option to disable it. And we're going to taxi out towards the runway. As we do so, you'll note that there is also a heading tape across the bottom of the HUD. So as I turn, we want to confirm that that heading tape moves correctly. The heading tape is denoted in tens and fives of degrees. So actually very, very handy kind of heading reference there. And you can see the central indicator has turned as well, which is exactly what we want to see. And the backup compass also turned, which is handy. So what we're tending to do is advance the throttle just a little bit to get us going, and then reducing it back to idle. It's pretty easy on the ground with the Viggen to pick up a bit too much speed. Make our way to the first runway we have here, just on the left. This runway has a heading of 110 degrees, and I'll just show you how to confirm that setting once we're at the center line. Normally it would be pre-programmed, but in this case it's not programmed into our data cartridge, so I can show you how that's done manually. Okay, just taking the center line now. Okay, it's close enough, and onto the toe brakes. And a quick visual inspection of the aircraft. It's looking pretty good. Flight surfaces are all working normally. And note that things like flaps and so on are completely automatic in this aircraft. So we don't have to worry about that. The only thing we need to do is raise the gear, and we need to have the gear up before 600 kilometers per hour. So, runway heading, ensure it matches the flight plan. I happen to know that in our case it does not, but let's go through the procedure in any case. So, data selector, go to Bana Grens. Bana is runway, in effect. Ensure that LS is the selected destination. LS is your landing strip. So if I press that, you should note that actually the indicator here doesn't change. However, some numbers have now appeared on the computer screen. First four digits are the heading, so it thinks that we have a heading of 17999. That actually is not correct for this runway just now, so we're going to switch the computer to input mode. I'm going to enter 110. Now the last two digits on the display are actually the TILS channel number, in the event that you're using the ILS system built into the Viggen. We are in fact not. You can press LS again and that will confirm that input. And now if we go back to the output mode, it will confirm that number back to us again. So the heading should now be correctly set. Actually, it's not really looking correct because we've got an initial 0. Let's try that again. Back to input mode. It should be 1, 1, 0, 0. We can leave the last two blank. Line select enter. Output mode again. That's it. Now it's correct. Okay, so that is now all working correctly. We can now put the system back to actual position and output mode. That's the computer programmed. Next page. Align with the runway. That's done. Ensure SPUC is on. It is. Verify the radar master knob LF is set to nav. It is. Apply the toe brakes and advance the throttle to mil power. And release the toe brakes and throttle to necessary afterburner zone. So we're going to go zone 2 because this is a normal runway. It's a very, very long runway. And what we're going to be monitoring are the different kind of bits of information that we have here in the HUD. We're most interested in these two bars here. So let me explain exactly what's going on here. We have the artificial horizon displayed as normal. We have this line surrounded by two lines either side. What will happen is as we accelerate, there will be two lines across the bottom here that will expand outwards, and once they reach the left and right pole here, that will be rotation speed. Now this is always correct because it uses angle of attack instead of an actual speed. This is currently an attitude indicator, not the flight path marker, very important to note, and it's depressed by 10 degrees. So actually this is on the horizon right now. We are of course lying flat. If we pull back to put this on the horizon, we will actually be 10 degrees nose up. Now we're not actually going to do that. What we're actually going to do is, if you take a little look at these bars up here, we have two tall ones and two short ones. The tall ones are actually the correct setting for an afterburner takeoff, and the shorter ones the correct setting for a mill power takeoff. We're going to do an afterburner takeoff, zone 2 today, so I'm going to pull that attitude indicator all the way up to this higher set, and I'm going to hold that until we are airborne. Once we're airborne, I'm going to bring the gear up, and the system will then transition into normal navigation mode. This dot in the middle is our reference heading, and that should be aligned with the runway. It is effectively aligned with the runway just now. And this number here on the left is our radar altimeter, currently reading 0. Once we are airborne, the attitude indicator will switch to a flight path marker, and that will be indicated by the fin appearing on the top of the flight path marker. Just now there's no fin, which means this is just an attitude indicator. Okay, let's get rid of the knee board and let's proceed with the takeoff. So we're going to advance to mill power here. On the toe brakes. That's about right. Off the toe brakes and advance all the way to zone 2. There, zone 2 indicated. Be very, very careful with your nose wheel steering inputs. We can see the line expanding. We're waiting for it to reach the reference points, and we will then rotate. The aircraft at this weight will almost rotate itself. So we want very, very gentle, small movements in pitch. Yep. It can be too easy to get that really high. That's about the right position there. Gear up. And we're going to maintain this level of pitch until the system transitions, as it has just done, to normal navigational mode. And you'll see that we have a fin now. I'm going to bring us out of afterburner, and I'm going to roll to the right. And you'll see that when the system transitioned to nav mode, it automatically selected waypoint 1, as indicated here with Bravo 1, and it's also showing us a range to that waypoint. We also have the little yellow indicator on our central indicator. By default, the system will set a reference altitude of 500 meters, unless we have selected an altitude that we want to fly this waypoint at in the mission editor, or in the CK37 computer. I'm going to engage attitude and height modes now, and actually as soon as I set height mode, you'll note that it actually adjusted the assigned altitude there. Once we're all the way around and flying towards the waypoint, I'll demonstrate how to switch that. But yeah, important thing to note is that we have a series of 3 poles at the left and 3 poles at the right of the heading for the waypoint. Once we come around on waypoint heading, you'll see what I mean. And we're actually almost on waypoint heading now. I'm going to start rolling out. Waypoint heading is indicated by this gap in the artificial horizon and a dot. And there we go. We're now flying basically on. So, a couple of things to note here. We have some... Oh, actually, I should have raised the HUD after takeoff. If I can find the click zone for it. There it is. This is the in-flight mode that you would normally use. So, let's go ahead and pause and take a quick look at this symbology. As before, we have the heading tape across the bottom of the HUD. We now have these altitude reference poles. There are 3 to the left and 3 to the right of the selected waypoint heading. When these are touching the horizon, we are at the currently referenced altitude. And these are 3 degree, 2 degree, and 1 degree lines. They're used to give you an indication of scale. We then have these outer lines here, which are the 100 meter reference lines. These, again, give you a kind of scale to the other lines, so you can understand how high, kind of how far above or below the currently selected altitude you are. Coming out of pause, I'm going to disengage attitude and height modes, and I'm going to climb above the currently selected altitude, and you'll see that those reference lines start to fall away from the horizon, giving you an indication that you're currently above your selected altitude. If I now dive down and start descending, you'll see them make their way back up to the horizon line, and I'll show you what happens if we go below. Just about to touch. Yep, and that's all three sets touching. We're going to continue our descent and actually go below those lines, and you'll see that we're starting to approach the 100-meter reference now. And eventually our horizon line will meet that when we're at the 100-meter altitude. 120, 110, 100. And now we're in low altitude mode. So the system automatically enters low altitude mode when you're below 100 meters on the radar altimeter, and it declutters the display completely so that you can concentrate on what you're doing. It's also a kind of indication that you've gone quite slow. Let's climb back up above 100 now. We've got our altitude indications again. Also note you've got a reference push button on your stick. So I can climb above my originally referenced altitude. Let's say that I actually want to fly at 400 meters above sea level. So going to bring ourselves up to about 400. Just like that, level out. I'm going to press reference, and you'll see that those lines then adjust, and we are ready to fly at the correct altitude again. It's going to trim out a little bit. Another thing to note is that the HUD will also declutter if you are pulling sort of quite aggressive maneuvers, if your pitch or roll are beyond limits. So actually not so much the roll. It stays on screen with the roll, so it's actually just the pitch then. If I climb really high, you'll see all indications are gone, including the flight path marker. So I can maneuver as I like. If I bring my nose down again, all of a sudden the HUD comes back to life. If I'm diving beyond limits, then again it blanks, and then I'm going to roll back out again, and we get symbology. So you're only getting symbology in a very kind of narrow range of pitch motions for the aircraft. And those are all of the basics. If I wanted to change the waypoint I was flying to, by the way, we have individual push buttons on the right console here to access the different waypoints. So let's say I want to fly to waypoint 6, I press Bravo 6, and if I look back up again, I can see Bravo 6 appears here, and I have a distance, and now the heading has actually changed. The dot is off to the side, so we can make our way all the way around and get ourselves back on course, just like that. And it's still, the height poles are still calibrated for 400 meters. One last thing to note, if you had a time on target set for the current waypoint, that would be indicated using the fin on the flight path marker. We don't at present. Let me just pause. However, I'm going to zoom in and explain to you what that would look like. You see here just now the fin is attached to the body of the flight path marker. If we had a time on target, that would mean that we are perfectly on time on target. If the fin is detached and appearing above the flight path marker, that's indicating that we're a little bit too fast right now, and how far above it is indicates how much too fast we are. It can also slide underneath, and it will actually start to poke into the circle of the flight path marker if we are slow. And then finally, if it starts to flash, if it's kind of below and flashing, that means that we are critically slow for our current time on target. And that's the basics of takeoff, and even a little bit of navigational flight. However, we will cover a lot more of that in future tutorials. So, I hope you all enjoyed that. Thank you very much indeed for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and comment. It's a really big help for me and for the channel. Also, if you'd like to further support the channel, you have the option of joining Deephack's ground crew. Big shout out to those of you who've already done so. Your names are on screen now. Thank you ever so much. There are some small benefits. You get to join Deephack's ground crew Discord server, and we're also looking at, on occasion, doing flights together. So, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Ta-ta!